Now, this GOP infighting, is this the worst you've ever seen it?
Oh, no, well, maybe it is. Probably.
Yeah.
It's probably. Yeah. It's bad.
Well, it is.
But listen, you know, the funny thing about the so-called infighting is that we agree on all the goals. We think Obamacare is bad for the country. We think we shouldn't spend more than what we bring in. We think the president's ignoring the laws. Yeah. It's all a fight over tactics. It's not over what our goals are.
Speaker Boehner on Leno last night and this week, and he talking about the Republican Party, the RNC in town, making some changes to how the 2016 calendar is going to come together, plus also talking about how to talk about things. We'll talk about all of that with the panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. Kirsten Powers, USA Today columnist and syndicated columnist. Charles Krauthammer. Okay, there is this vote today, Steve, about consolidating the primary calendar and really having the RNC take more control over it. What about that and how it's going to play?
Well, I mean, I think there's a pretty good argument for doing that, particularly if you look back at the way things unfolded in 2012 and to a certain extent how things unfolded in 2008. I mean, obviously the extended primary calendar in 2012 led to some bloody debate fights that the Republicans didn't want to see happen again. This, I think, helps to, it won't eliminate that, but it helps to probably make them somewhat less bloody, or at least less extended. Moving the convention to earlier in the summer, I think, does a couple of things that are probably beneficial to Republicans. One, it shortens that time even further. Two, it gives them access to general election funds earlier. So Republicans won't be in a position, whoever the Republican nominee is, won't be in a position where he or she has to, in effect, defer playing defense or defer trying to define himself as Mitt Romney did this time because the convention was in August, was so late. And the second thing it does is it probably leads to the naming of a running mate earlier, which could potentially allow a running mate to spend more time campaigning around the country, raising money, doing things like that.
Here's how the RNC chairman described it today, and also someone who voted against this plan.
We were no longer going to sit around and allow ourselves to slice and dice for 6 months, participate in a circus of debates, but we were going to take hold once again of our responsibility at the Republican National Committee, because we are the custodians of the nomination process.
In a constricted period, you know, we could have wound up with presidential nominee Herman Cain or Newt Gingrich or any number of other people who at one point or another were doing a good job. We need a testing period. We don't need to nominate somebody from a fluke.
Okay, Charles.
Well, I think it could work either way. You could get a fluke candidate who emerges just at the moment when it's being decided early, or I think the more likely scenario is whoever has the most money, the most name recognition going in is the most likely to prevail, and that isn't always the best candidate. So, I mean, there's an argument to be made for stringing it out so you can get people coming out of nowhere, like Jimmy Carter or others, if you go way back. And remember, he did win in 1976. But I think the most important element of this is cutting down the number of debates. The Republican brand was deeply injured by the fact that we had a weak field in 2012. We're actually going to have a strong one in 2016. There's going to be a huge difference in the level of debate and the quality of the candidates and the experience of the candidates. But I think having 20 debates where there was all that acrimony and always a pull to the right, way beyond where some people wanted to go, was deeply injurious to the party.
5 of them were really good. Kirsten, a lot of talk, a lot of, well, buzz about a colleague of ours, Governor Mike Huckabee, and what he said at the meeting this week.
Women I know are outraged that the Democrats think that women are nothing more than helpless and hopeless creatures whose only goal in life is to have the government provide for them birth control medication. Women I know are smart, educated, intelligent, capable of doing anything that anyone else can do, and if the Democrats want to insult the women of America by making them believe that they are helpless without Uncle Sugar coming in and providing for them a prescription each month for birth control, because they cannot control their libido or their reproductive system without the help of the government, then so be it.
Now, that's the longer soundbite.
Right.
Many of the soundbites run, only took the last little clip there.
Right. Right. So it caused a lot of controversy. I think that people should know that they're probably going to just get the little clip of it and be prepared for that. I think the problem is that what he said, he was saying that this is what Democrats believe, but there really are no Democrats that believe that. There are no Democrats that believe that women need to be told that the government has to pay for their health care to control their libido. I mean, that's something that I think he believes, or conservatives believe. I think that the Democrats believe that women want to be able to control their reproductive choices, and that it's a health decision, and so therefore they want to be covered by the government. So what I would say is that big picture, Republicans it's better if they just don't talk about women's reproductive libido. Anything related to that is not going to really work for them.
To that point, Reince Priebus had this to say today, very quickly.
I've said many times before that the policies and principles of this party are sound. However, as we look to grow the ranks of our party, we must all be very conscious of tone and choice of words when we communicate those policies effectively.
Now, I don't know if that was specifically pointed, Steve, but it came in the speech today.
Well, I mean, I think Huckabee certainly, he seemed to me to have a certain smirk on his face, like he knew he was going somewhere that would be dangerous, and he was trying to be provocative. Look, I think it's probably good advice for Republicans, particularly Republican men. Don't talk about libido, but I don't think it's good advice. I don't think it's right to say they shouldn't be talking about reproductive health issues. Republicans have positions, men and women. It's perfectly appropriate for Republicans to make an argument, make a solid argument, make it as passionately as they want to. Just be careful how you joke about it.
It's interesting that all of this focus, Democrats, about how women's issues are essentially that party's issue now. One of the reasons, perhaps, that Cathy McMorris Rodgers has been chosen to deliver the response to the State of the Union address.
But that kind of cosmetic change is not going to work if you keep having people talk about the psychology of women's sexuality. For God's sake, why do you have to talk about that? I agree with Steve. It isn't that you don't have to speak about the issue. Let me give a piece of advice. How about talking about late-term abortions? You can get a huge majority of Americans who will say this is an abomination and would support it. So stick to that, argue that, win on that, and then accuse, I think, correctly, Democrats who oppose restrictions on that of being really in the wrong.
I just want to be clear, you're also agreeing with Kirsten.
Well, yeah.
I just want to make that clear for the panel.
There's one other point. I was going to give a piece. You almost got me off my game. The other piece of advice is when there's a suit between the Leviathan state of Obama against the Little Sisters of the Poor, take the side of the Little Sisters of the Poor. You can't lose.
Next up.
As Kirsten has said.
Yes, that's right. Next up, the Friday